All right, welcome to Breathing Underwater's Musicast. This is episode number 7. In this episode, we're going to be talking specifically about Deftones and Jonah Matranga related projects. Because we dedicated a whole episode to Machine Head, so we might as well dedicate another episode to some other favorite bands and artists of ours. I think it's safe to say that Deftones and Jonah have been a favorite of ours for a long time, probably since high school for all of us. By the way, I have with me Dave, as usual.
Hi.
Got Jay back on the line.
Hi, I'm really happy to be on the Max Cavalera episode.
And Chris.
So,
If we go back in time for a second, if we look back at the moment of inception, I think the first time that I heard about the Deftones, or Dave and I heard about the Deftones, was on the Crow 2 soundtrack, the City of Angels, and they had a song on there called Teething, and I remember at the time thinking that they were kind of ripping off of Korn, who I wasn't really that familiar with, but I knew some of their stuff. I think Dave was more into Korn before I was, right, Dave?
yes.
You kind of got me into Korn. I wasn't really on the board with them at first, and then we got Around the Fur, and we were totally sold, and I don't think really much has topped that since we got that album in like 1998 or something, right?
Yeah.
So, and then through, I think, Jay, you were the one that discovered Far originally, I believe, because you were looking for like Deftones related bands, and I think you found like a website that was about Deftones and Far, and you told us that we needed to check that out, and we did, and then I think we got like, I remember actually finding Far's first major release, the Tin Cans with Strings to You, at a like a Best Buy or something up in Annapolis, and I was surprised because I didn't think that they were that popular to be sold in a Best Buy. And then I ordered Modern Solutions, and I remember I got I don't know who it was. It was probably Jonah that sent it, but I got like a hand addressed envelope. Like they were still selling their own merch by hand, even though they were a major label band at the time, and they had just gone on their indefinite hiatus like right before we discovered them. So yeah, I think that's where we're coming from. We're all big Deftones and Far and Jonah fans, and we've seen them both many times, and I thought it was worth dedicating an episode to. So in this episode, we are going to kind of look at their careers in retrospective, and then we're going to review their latest releases. We'll talk about our favorite releases of theirs, and we'll talk about our favorite show experiences of theirs. So I think it's interesting because both Far and the Deftones, if I'm not mistaken, were from Sacramento originally, right?
I am 100% sure about that.
They were both from Sacramento. They were friends, which is evidenced by all of the collaborations that they did. That Jonah especially was on a lot of like Deftones B-sides and things. They did Savory, the Jawbox cover, and they did Ain't No Ordinary Love, the Sade cover, and a couple other songs I think Jonah was on. You know what's funny is I never knew that Savory was a cover until, I don't know, like I didn't know anything about Jawbox really. And then
Are they good?
Chris is down. He got me their stuff.
I'm done. I'll check them out then.
They're good. They're like,
I like them from a
Go ahead.
historical point too, so
they're like post-hardcore. They were like originator.
one of the original historical.
Yeah, like the early when post-hardcore was still heavy before it became emo.
Okay.
It was kind of like I would almost call it like slow punk, with like a heavier side to it. That's what I would say. Bands like Jawbox were like.
Sunny D Real Estate-esque or what? Heavier minor threat, like East Coast.
Anyway, and that was on the Deftones. I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago they put out their B-sides and rarities album that had all that stuff on it. It was interesting because they hadn't given Jonah any credit for those songs until they released that album. So I thought that was kind of funny. I was going to point out that I think it's interesting that the Deftones and Far were kind of coming up around the same time, and they were contemporaries of each other. But I think it's interesting that Far, if you listen back to the earlier catalog of earlier albums, like Quick and The Listening Game, they're very, to me, they were very much more like a kind of a harder edge, like grunge band, or like a almost like post-hardcore kind of sound. And Jonah was a lot more aggressive, and their like guitar was much more kind of hard edged, and and like the percussion was really in your face. And then they did Tin Cans, which was kind of a little more mature, but it still had some songs that were a little on like the heavier side. And then Water and Solutions was much more of a very very mature, that kind of like epic album, that like the pinnacle of their career. And I think it influenced a lot of the emo movement. So I just think it's interesting where they started and where they kind of ended up. And then Deftones, conversely, where they were like one of the forerunners of the new metal movement, and they integrated a lot of hip hop elements and things into the metal. So I just think it's interesting how they kind of. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
Listening to a little bit of that early genre stuff, it sounds like you did come from like the harder edge of the grunge movement.
Agreed.
Definitely not for that's way afterwards, but yeah, I don't know.
I just thought that was an interesting comparison between the two of them, because they're from the same place and they were friends, but unlike Korn and Deftones, who were friends, Far and Deftones did not share that that kind of. I wonder if they even ever toured together, like, and I doubt that Far ever toured with bands like Korn, but Deftones obviously were, Korn and Deftones were like brethren for a while. But then also, in terms of their career, I think it's interesting the way that they kind of went off in different directions too. Even though I don't think Deftones or Far ever kind of reached the mainstream peak that some of their other peers did, that they came out of that era and out of that area, like Korn. But they both kind of stayed under the radar a little bit, far more than Deftones, and obviously then they broke up earlier than Deftones kept going. But I think it's interesting that they both they made a lot of choices to kind of keep things to not go that overly successful route, where they were kind of keeping it real more than some of their other contemporaries. And now I don't know. I think Deftones has kind of kept a similar level of success. They've been kind of hovering around. They have like a core fan base, and I don't really know if it's growing or not. But Far, I was kind of wondering, when they put out their latest album after like 10 years of being broken up, if that really expanded them at all, if it was really just more of a nostalgic thing for their fans. What do you guys think?
I was really surprised when, like, going back to them, both Jonah and Far and Deftones not sinking into a really, eventual mainstream stance both in sound and in popularity. But I was really surprised when looking into like the roots of both bands, or at least the lead singers. Obviously Jonah goes back to like a singer-songwriter mode, but I was really surprised to see like how Chino is into like all these artsy like shoegazer and kind of ambient music.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely heard those influences in Deftones after Adrenaline, but I was just surprised that he's like so open about, oh, I actually like these bands. I don't just I don't just incorporate the sound into my own music. I actually genuinely like this stuff that you wouldn't, like you said, fit in with like the average new metal scene.
And that's also evidenced by the Team Sleep side project that Chino did.
It's interesting that album really did have a shoegazer like influence to it. Team Sleep.
Oh yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Jay?
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, the Deftones got more play than Far did, by far. But I mean, I think part of it too is Far breaking up. Maybe if they'd stayed together, they could have gotten famous. I mean, Jonah's been like he was in that music video for that Linkin Park Kid side project with that Dido chick. Like, I mean, so he's been all over MTV and stuff, but it's just not. He's kind of still managed to stay out of the limelight. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but he's also, and I think Jonah and the Deftones share a similar kind of like rabid fan base, where they're able to kind of sustain what they do. Like I said, I'm not sure if either one are growing in the music biz, with getting new fans and their publicity, if they even need to very much publicize themselves at this point. I think it, for the most part, like both bands, is just word of mouth, they're both able to kind of sustain where they're at because they're always been so kind of honest and loyal to their fans. Maybe Jonah a little bit more than Deftones, but you know what, about the Deftones, and then relating to Far breaking up, I think it's interesting because I read an interview a long time ago. It was probably around like the turn of the last century when Chino had said something about like if the band ever broke up and that would be it, they would never get back together because they didn't want to be like a reunion band. They didn't want to be cliche like that, and I always kind of respected that as much of a jerk that he was proposed to be in the media. They would talk about Chino and his ass attitude, but I at least appreciated enough that they respected their fans and their music enough to do it as long as they were into it, and then stop if they weren't. And I think Jonah is the exact same way. So even though like their styles are different and their careers have been a little bit different, I think they share that kind of similar headspace about where they're coming from. And I think that's one reason that I think they're gonna live on a lot longer than some of their contemporaries that were part of all these different whatever post-hardcore, post-grunge, alternative, emo, screamo, alt metal, rap metal, new metal, like whatever you can try to classify as.
I got another comment on the topic.
All right.
I just always found them an interesting pair. It's like Deftones and Far like go together.
Yeah, right.
When you could see it if you know the artist, but it's from looking at it from the outside, one was always grouped into new metal, the other one was always grouped into like some sort of like pre like emo-ish, primordial, before that label came out and all that, and just alternative, whatever.
Right.
Post-grunge, maybe you could call it. Post-grunge alternative, but more indie, underground, whatever.
And I also always like that at this point, both of them have this kind of unsung, iconic status as being like forebears in their genres that even bands that are more more popular or whatever and get more press these days acknowledge them as forebears and originators.
Yeah.
That band Breaking Benjamin, they acknowledged Deftones as one of their main influences.
So did Linkin Park.
Yeah.
Linkin Park were known to cover some Deftones songs during some of the earlier tours.
It was like as weirdly mainstream as you could get years ago. Like I saw like a little kind of, I guess like a little box article on Jonah and Rolling Stone, and they basically were saying that this guy has like all the current singer, songwriter, guy with guitars owe Jonah their careers.
I don't know if that's true necessarily, but
I mean, it was a broad generalization, but I just kind of thought it was interesting how like they acknowledged him in such like a very mainstream, pop music magazine, and this was like maybe back in the early 2000s, and he's still going along.
Yeah.
And it's not like appearing in Rolling Stone made him super famous or anything, but he's still going along and doing his thing.
I think one thing that Jonah has proved in his career, even though he did have a built-in fan base, which is why we discovered him, because he had the band before he did the singer-songwriter stuff, but that you can do it, and you can do it all by yourself. And he's put in a ton of hard work, and he's kind of evolved and changed his stance on the music biz and how he was going to be a part of it for as he went along. But I mean, he does all his own merch, and like he books all his own tours, and he he just does everything totally like DIY, and he does it totally like person to person. Remember, well, we're gonna talk more about shows later, but Jay, you were there that first time we saw him in Pasadena, right?
Yeah.
And Dave was there, and we saw him just because he like had a website, and he was like he had a message board, and he was like, I'm looking to play these general areas around these general dates. Does anybody have any place for me to play? And somebody in our hometown was like, yep. And then he did. It was.
No, yeah, it was me. Like, I was like, I want you to play in Pasadena.
That was you that made that happen?
Well, I was the one that brought the original idea up. I didn't make it happen because it wasn't in my house.
Right. Oh, but I didn't realize it. Dude, that's awesome.
Okay.
Chris, I wish you could have been there.
I don't even know what year that was.
That was 1999, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, though.
It was.
It's one of the best shows I've ever been to. Like,
agreed.
how about Chino's weight gain? Let's talk about that.
All right, yeah, let's talk about when Chino got really fat. That was around like 2000, right before White Pony came out, and then, no.
I do remember.
And he found Kenny Craig. That was my fault too. I told him, I was like, dude, you need to fix this. You can't be stage diving in the crowd, being that big. You're gonna hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And then he lost weight.
But I remember when we went to the signing of White Pony, like right before or a couple days after it came out, and then we went to the show later that night. And
yeah.
Towson, remember that? And I remember somebody, I think Amy had drawn a portrait of Chino.
Yeah.
Like around.
I remember that.
Remember that? And he was getting it signed, or he was signing it, and then like, I think it was like, it was probably Chi or Frank was like, oh look, it's Chino in his skinny days.
Even that was their guitarist. Yeah.
It was Stefan. Yeah, he was like, oh, it's Chino in his skinny days, and now he's like before, like his chipmunk cheeks.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Chino, it was kind of funny. Chino didn't say anything. He was like the only one that didn't look up and say hi to anybody. He was just signing. But everybody else was like super nice.
Yeah, because he was so obese, that would have been too much calories he would have burned.
I know, right? He was working on his figure. He was trying to get fatter.
Yeah, he was trying out for that sumo wrestling challenge in Japan.
Okay, so I find it also coincidentally interesting that they both put out their latest albums in, what was that, 2010, and which is interesting because it always takes the Deftones several, if not many years to put out an album, and then Far, they were broken up for 10 years, and they just happened to put out an album at the same year the Deftones did. So I think it's worth giving a quick roundtable review of those two releases. Let's start with Diamond Eyes. Chris, let's start with you. What was your take on Diamond Eyes, especially now that you've had a couple years to digest it?
It's probably, at this point, my second favorite of their albums. I don't know, like, I was oddly never a huge fan of Adrenaline or their fourth self-titled
Okay.
CD. Both of them sound kind of sluggish to me. Saturday Night Wrist was good, but it felt a bit, I don't know, like there was some spark that was missing that they kind of recaptured. Is there a story I should know?
That's worth a mention. The interesting thing about Saturday Night Wrist is that most of that was recorded, like they recorded their tracks separately because they weren't like really getting along at the time, and they were just kind of screwing around. So they would like record separately and then send them to each other to mix. And then they had like, I don't remember how many producers, but they had Bob Ezrin for a while, and then they had Shaun Lopez come on and like fix some of the tracks because they I don't know, they just weren't happy with the production that was going on. So like the whole album, like they weren't getting along, they weren't really like into what they were doing, and then they kept switching producers. So I just think it's funny that album kind of turned out the way it did, where it's all just kind of, it feels very kind of slapped together and inconsistent, and it just definitely shows where they were at. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
I always say that my favorite is White Pony or Around the Fur, and usually it ends up being White Pony just because it's kind of sentimental. That was the first Deftones I heard. But I always really like the diversity of that album in a good way. How all the songs kind of sounded, all the different styles being kind of explored with that, but it still sounded from the same coherent band. And I was really intrigued when I heard that, unfortunately before Chi's accident, that the album they were working on was supposedly going to be kind of almost like a follow-up, and the
Eros.
exploratory nature is White Pony.
They have that album ready to go. They just never released it. So I wonder if we'll ever see that sometime.
I would like to. It is actually okay. I wasn't sure how fully recorded it was.
They said it was done and they shelved it right after Chi had his accident.
I think that was a good idea. I mean, I don't know.
I think they're kind of waiting to see what happens with Chi.
Yeah, that's good. And I will just add that I wish the Diamond Eyes track had been in the final Harry Potter movie.
Because of the owl?
That was a hardcore owl. Because of the owl, that's all.
That owl was beastly. I was scared.
Yes.
In that same video, there was an owl and broken glass. It was like watching the labyrinth, in a nightmare.
It was on steroids.
Yeah. All right, Jay, your turn. What do you think about Diamond Eyes?
I thought Diamond Eyes was alright. Like, it's not my favorite Deftones album, but like Chris, I like it better than, I think he said he liked it better than the self-titled. And also, like, my favorite one is Around the Fur, and then after that, White Pony. But, yeah, I really didn't enjoy the self-titled. But I think they're on the right track, and I really think I would really like to hear that album that they had with Chi. Maybe they could release it and call it Chi, and maybe not tour or something out of respect for him. I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. I think they should put it out.
Yeah, they're doing a lot for his family, and maybe they could donate all the proceeds to them for his medical.
I wonder why they haven't done that.
I mean, that's a touchy subject. I don't know what I would do if that was my friend that was in a coma.
But I'm sure she would want it. Want the music out there, though. I mean, it seems like he was always big on that. But I just gotta bring something up about this Chi situation. It's just something I've always thought, never really articulated. But the Deftones, I'm sure that they're not rich, but they're friends with a lot of rich rock stars, namely Korn. For sure, and I'm sure there's other bands that they've connected with, or whatever. People in the industry that have a lot of money. I'm wondering why Chi and his family have to plead with regular people like you and me, to send in $5, on PayPal just to help pay for his medical costs. Can't Jonathan Davis get off of his golden throne and just be I'm gonna sell my stupid alien, Stan Winston designed microphone stand on eBay for Chi. And I know that they've had some concerts and benefits for Chi, but don't you think that if any of those guys in Korn, if Monkey gave even a tenth of his estate to Chi, that it would pay for his medical bills for the rest of his life? Why isn't that happening? I'm just curious.
I was wondering that too. I was don't they have connections and touring and artists for a while? They have some money.
Korn was a multi-platinum selling band for every single album they've ever put out. Even their lesser selling ones still sold multi-platinum. I don't know about this new one, but you know what I mean? If that was my friend and I had millions and millions of dollars, I might give him $1 million. Here you go, pocket change. But you know what? I can't judge because I don't know how their financial situation is. But I was just a curiosity, I'm just curious. All right, Dave, what's your? I guess we're gonna include both. So what's your review of Diamond Eyes, and what is your favorite Deftones album?
I like Diamond Eyes. I think it was a little more straightforward than their Saturday Night Wrist. It's got a good dynamic and heaviness to it. I'm gonna agree with Jason. My favorite Deftones albums are Around the Fur, and second one is White Pony. It's just honestly, I feel like it had been put off. Not put off is a strong word, but my liking of their albums has waned a little bit since Chino more vocally drones on a little more, where I can't figure out his lyrics, and it's more dreamy and stuff. But that said, I still really it took me a while, but I actually got into Saturday Night Wrist. I didn't think anything of it at first. I liked it for the self-titled, but it was one of those albums where half the songs I love, half of them are kind of just there. Mm-hmm. But the new one, every song is is good. To me, I think I can compare this to like Eddie Vedder, where like he like sort of changed his vocal style, and I like took a while to get into. You know what I mean?
I totally do.
Like No Code, and afterwards, I wasn't on board.
Yeah.
Well, now I am. So it's taken me a while to get it more on board with Chino's new, more, I guess, a little more spacey, creative type of vocal style. Although he's really brought back the screaming, which is great. It's just awesome.
All right, before I throw in my 2 cents real quick, I just want to make a general observation. One thing that I appreciate about the Deftones, and the reason that I feel comfortable always referring to them as my favorite band, is that I don't like everything, or I guess I haven't always been, completely satisfied with everything that they've put out in its entirety. And there are definitely songs on each of the albums that we talked about that are not, I don't think is their best work, and they could have done better on. But that kind of makes me like them more, to know that they're not, I don't know, I don't hold them up to the same standards that I do some bands, where I'm trying to think of a comparison at this point, but I can't. What I'm trying to say is that I always feel like everything they do in some way or another is honest, and they never play by the rules. They never do the tours that they should have done, or whatever, that would have made them big. They never write the albums that you would think that they would, to fit in with the times. Not to keep going back to poor Machine Head, but like when they got Ross Robinson and they put out the Burning Red, it was kind of obvious that like what they were doing, even though it's still a great record, it's just like, they're gonna have that, as a kind of, I don't want to say a stain on their career, but it was just, they can't deny that they were kind of jumping on the bandwagon, and like I think a lot of bands do that to stay relevant. But the Deftones, like, they carved out their niche really smartly early on. When Korn was going the way Korn was going, they were like, we're not going to do that, and we're not going to tour with them anymore. We're going to just keep doing what we want to do. And I think that's kind of like, and you've seen Korn do this thing where they've like peaked, and they're still really popular, but I don't think that they're ever going to get back to where they were. As opposed to the Deftones, who I think are like at the same level they've been at pretty much since Around the Fur. Like, they can play the same venues, sell them out every time. They have fans clamoring for the music, and I think they just play the game really well. So when it comes to their releases, like I'm always kind of open. I'm always really willing to just take it for what it is, and not be too, it wasn't this or it wasn't that, because I don't really know what to expect from them at this point. But one thing I really appreciate about them is that none of their songs sound the same to me. Every single song, whether it's their best or not, sounds like a Deftones song, but doesn't sound like any of their other songs. There's no repetition with them.
There's no character.
With the exception of Elite. That one song, I just like wish was half as long and had like another section to it, because there's something about that Elite that just felt like they were really phoning that one in. I just had to say that. All right. That said,
I guess one thing I had to say to comparison, agreement with you on, is unlike Korn, who I feel like Korn, they got this idea in their head after following Leader that we're gonna throw out albums pretty quickly. We're gonna be like the 80s. Just to make the analogy, we're gonna be like the 80s bands.
I think they actually said that in an interview, that they wanted to be more like Black Sabbath or something, who would just put out an album a year.
Yeah, and it may have been a good idea for a phase, but it seems like it seems like they throw out albums. When Deftones, even the albums that we haven't, they have taken longer to get into, I don't feel like they just put out a generic Deftones album. They're like, here's an album of us, and it's gonna sound like us, and it's just gonna be generic.
Yeah.
I think Korn has done that, and Deftones never done that.
So, jumping off of that, my take on Diamond Eyes was kind of the same as every time they put an album. I'm just always really excited about it, and then when I get it, I take my time with it, and I just let it, kind of be what it is. One thing I've always appreciated about the Deftones is that their music is very full. It's got a very rich, like, full sound. All the instruments, I feel like, kind of They give you all the different, levels of tones. They have really good lows, mids, and highs, so they don't really, fall short in one area or another. And there's songs that are very, to me, like very technically pleasing and very emotionally compelling, and I don't think that Diamond Eyes is any different in that regard. And I think, and like the contrast between where they were with Saturday Night Wrist and then Diamond Eyes, I mean, as unfortunate it was about what happened to Chi, I also think that kind of reinvigorated them a little bit to like really focus on playing together as a band and not just doing whatever they were doing, because they just seem so like distracted. I mean, and I think it's interesting, pretty much on around the White Pony and then the self-titled and Saturday Night Wrist, you can really feel the tensions of the band where Stefan is like the metalhead and he wants to play heavy stuff, so they throw in a couple heavy songs, but then Chino's wherever Chino's at, and they you got those like big egos kind of clashing, and you kind of feel like the songs are just, they're not quite congealed enough to like really get across like exactly what they're trying to say. But I feel like Diamond Eyes was the first time since Around the Fur that they really got it down to like, they're back to just like all on the same page. And that's it, to me, Diamond Eyes and Around the Fur are the closest albums that they've done in that regard, where every song feels like it was very purposeful, and it wasn't like, well, fine, we'll let you have this like kind of really chuggy like whatever, really heavy riff, and then but then we're gonna throw in a real spacey chorus or whatever. It felt like they were really on the same page about writing those songs, from beginning to end, with all the layers they wanted to put in, was very well thought out. And there are songs in there that really don't catch my attention as well as some other ones. Another thing I liked about it was it kind of showed their playful side a little bit more, like Rocket Skates, has Chino kind of, giving some weird inflections that you haven't really heard from him before. And I love how heavy it is, but it feels very like intentionally non-specifically heavy, where it's not like this is an angry song. It feels more like this song is a heavy song, but it's not necessarily like just a straight up like metal song. You know what I mean? Like I really feel like the Deftones have kind of outgrown metal or any whatever, any pigeonholed genre, and they really just do what they do, and they do it really, really well. And I think it helps that Chino's lost a lot of weight, because now his vocal cords are open again. So I'm not being facetious. Thank you, Jason, for getting that.
That's hilarious.
Somebody gets my humor. So my favorite Deftones album though is always going to be Around the Fur. It's my favorite album ever. I just can't imagine another album ever topping that.
No.
It's just so phenomenal. It was the first album that I ever heard that I can recall where every single song I just loved for a lot of different reasons, and it just kind of has everything on it. It's just, and it's so unique, like the guitar tone and the percussion, like in Mascara, the way that song's put together, it still blows my mind when and it's been what, like 13 years or something that since we first heard it. I just love that album. So I don't dislike their self-titled one as much as the rest of you guys seem to, though. I agree that it kind of hits some slow spots, but to me that's nothing compared to their couple songs on Saturday Night Wrist, like Pink Cell Phone and that up down left right blah blah blah, the instrumental. If I can make one request of the Deftones, please don't ever write another instrumental song. I just didn't work. I don't understand why they did that. Because to me, it's like if you're gonna do an instrumental, it didn't even feel like, if you're gonna do an interlude, that's one thing, but it didn't even feel like an interlude. It just felt like they were just kind of jamming, and they didn't really know, they were all high or whatever, and they just weren't really like on board with it, and they were just kind of deedling around. You know what I mean? Sorry if you guys like that song, but it's like instrumental music works really well when it like builds like a normal song does. But I just felt like that song was just nothing. I just skipped through it. And I never skip it, Deftones song, even on the ones that I don't love.
I wouldn't call it nothing. I would call it garbage, which I think is French for trash. Garbage.
And then what was Pink's cell phone all about? Like, what was that? I still don't understand.
I saw this video on the internet, and I think it was in reference to that.
Like something that they watched and like made a
Nah,
song
I
about.
was making a sick joke. I don't really know.
Oh, like I said, I think that they were just kind of screwing around on that album. Like they weren't, none of them were really focused on any goals. They were just like, yeah, we're just gonna do some
I'd
stuff.
also make that same request on Soulfly's numbered instrumentals.
You know they're gonna keep doing that, dude.
No, please.
That was one of my favorite things about Soulfly.
It used to be one of my favorite things about Soulfly, but on the last few, like the last two, it's just like they just go no. I feel like it's jamming for jamming's sake.
I feel like every episode we like rag on Max, but it's true. Like he's really pigeonholed himself, or at least he sticks to the trends that he started. It's like he does all these really cool, unique things, you know, like on the first couple Soulfly albums, and then he's like, well, better keep doing that. Like he keeps putting his damn nephew or whoever, Richie, in songs, and that kid has sucked since, you know, whatever. That kid's always been horrible. Remember when he used to bring him out to do Bleed, and he just sucked. He couldn't who would have thought that anybody could put Fred Durst to shame? I'm sorry, that Fred Durst could put anybody to shame, but Fred Durst put that kid to shame.
I know that kid. Oh God, it was you're embarrassed for him. It's like, dude, it's feet. You better like on feet, you know.
He couldn't find rhythm, and then the last time that we saw Soulfly, I think, was the Dark Ages tour, and I remember he was like, all right, here comes, you know, let's get Richie out here to do Bleed, and then Richie never came out, and he was like, oh, I don't even know where he is, let's just go on to the next song. I was like, thank God, you know, I don't want to hear this again. All right, since this is such a long podcast this time, we're going to take a break from the talk and do a little quick song study here. Since we were just talking about Jawbox and their song Savory, and it's been covered by both the artists that we're talking about, I thought we'd take a quick look at the history of this song. The first time I heard it was the first time I saw Jonah in a living room in Pasadena, Maryland during the summer of 1999, and he mentioned Jawbox, who I'd never heard of at the time. And then he released Sketchy EP number 2 a few years later and put his cover of this song on there. And then several years later, the Deftones put out their B-Sides and Rarities album, and they had a collaboration cover of this song on there between them and Far. But the song was originally released in 1994 on Jawbox's For Your Own Special Sweetheart album. And here is a clip from that. Now here's a clip of a very faithful adaptation of this song that Deftones and Far did together at some point, and was released officially on the Deftones B-Sides and Rarities album that was put out in the mid-2000s. Hey, angel, consider your position, flame to be consumed, Alright, and here's a full version of the song. This version originally appeared on One Line Drawing, or Jonah's solo project, on Sketchy EP number 2, and he did it with his little R2 drum machine. Hope you enjoy. wants to talk about At Night We Live and then give their favorite Far release, or Jonah.
I really liked At Night We Live. It, like from what we were talking about in an earlier episode, where bands that get back together but then they don't become anything new. I actually thought that worked with Far because, I mean, well, I never knew that they officially went on an indefinite hiatus. I thought they just flat out, ended. So, I was really surprised when they did come back 10 years later.
I think they originally had called it a hiatus, and then they just broke up without really ever saying it.
But to me, it just sounds like a record of, like, a bunch of friends who haven't played together in a long time coming together and kind of picking things right back up where they left off. And, it's not quite as heavy as their, like, the Tin Cans and Water and Solutions, and I think it's almost more emotionally open. And I guess just to rub salt in the wound, it was also really cool to see them live again when they were touring for the pre-release of the album. And I mean, like, that whole crowd that night was pretty much late 20-somethings around our age who you knew they were there because they had been fans when they were first around.
Yeah.
And just like even walking out of the Metro, I ran into another guy coming out of the show, and we were just like, that was so freaking cool.
Did they play like older stuff, like before Tin Can stuff?
They might have. No, I don't think so. They might have played one song or so, but it was mainly Tin Cans, Water and Solutions, and then some stuff from the new one, which hadn't actually come out yet.
So, Chris, what's your favorite Jonah release?
Album would probably be Visitors.
Why?
I don't know. For some reason, it's like just kind of like a perfect album for me. It's the best syncing up, I think, of his acoustic singer-songwriter like path, and with more of a larger non-acoustic sound, and just and also just a lot of there's several songs on that album that just like bring a smile and grin to my face, and if I'm in a bad mood, I can literally put it on and it'll just pick me up.
Like Smile?
Yeah, Smile, and it's just like I feel like it's a really. I mean, all of this stuff is really cool, but I feel like it's just kind of a very life-affirming album.
So the gloves are coming off. Jay, what's your take on At Night We Live?
I didn't buy it. I didn't really like it. I listened to previews of it. It's not to say I might change my mind at some point and buy it, but...
Because you had mentioned this before on our episode number 3. You were talking about like the baby bird, mama bird situation. Why do you feel like that was... I thought it was an interesting analogy, and I was hoping you could extrapolate it a little bit.
It was the baby bird, mama bird. That's like my favorite analogy. It just sounded like the same stuff. Like they could have just basically thrown all their other albums into a grinder, and this would have came out. Like it wasn't. I don't know. I just wasn't impressed. Like.
So do you feel like they were just
like they didn't? And I mean, I don't know. Like I really hope they come out with something else, or maybe the album will grow on me. I don't know, but yeah, I know I'm not.
Chris and Dave and I talked about this on the last episode before we saw Thursday. We talked about why bands even get back together after like huge hiatuses or breakups or something, long time in between. And so do you think that why do you think that Far even got back together and made this album? If you think it's so kind of regurgitated.
Midlife crisis, maybe. I don't know. Like, if you had this rockin' ass band, and then what was it, 10 years later, you could go back and, I would have seen them live if I'd had the opportunity. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't know why. Why wouldn't they get back together? Like, they've made amends or whatever. Like, there are some bands out there that I think need to just stop touring because they're getting too old and senile, and it's sad, but Far is not one of those bands.
I take with my idea that I talked about earlier, where an artist, a band gets at least some notoriety or gets themselves in the music scene, a lot of connections, and they may, they originally it's all about the band that you're originally in, and you get yourself into the scene. And then eventually, if that band doesn't end up being like, huge superstars, or it's just there, and you may, eventually I think these artists get so much in the music business and into side projects that after a while that band just becomes another big side project, and especially if they break up, get back together.
Yeah.
It's just a side project. If they make it, they make it. They don't, they don't. There's not the pressure they initially had when they're trying to spearhead themselves into a career in the music business.
So, Dave, are you saying that you think that bands need that drive to to really prove themselves, to put out like quality material, and if they don't have that, then it becomes more of like what Jason's saying, is this like just giving the fans what they expect, because they don't need that. They don't have that pressure to like produce something new and evolved.
I want to clarify too, like even Far's worst album is still way better than any of that regurgitated crap from like Nickelback, Alter Bridge, all the Breaking Benjamin, all those bands that all sound exactly the same. Disturbed.
I can't even.
I'm not in any way discrediting Far.
Yeah.
Like, they're still a great band.
Sure.
You're saying compared to their own standards, it doesn't live up.
Yes, exactly.
I see what you're saying.
Like, yeah.
Chris, do you have anything else to add?
I kind of think me and Jay feel almost like the same way about it. Like, it's nothing new. It's a continuation of the old, but I liked it more than hated. That's kind of that's all.
Yeah, it might be one of those things that grows on me. I really haven't taken the time to listen to it all, and that it might grow on me. I have had that happen with music before, so
I think I can piggyback on what both of you guys are saying. The way that they hyped up the album was with I think that they released a couple singles from it before they put it out, and it was Deafening and then At Night We Live, which were like totally different song, like on different ends of the sonic spectrum, because Deafening was just just a pounding post-hardcore, kind of what you'd expect from earlier Far, kind of angsty and heavy kind of song. And then At Night We Live was much more of like Water and Solutions kind of material, where it was very a lot more introspective and melodic, and and much more just like emotionally weighted. And I was kind of expecting something in between for this album, that it would be more of a like a heavier cross between of like Water and Solutions, and then wherever they were going with the post-hardcore stuff. But I was initially a little let down. I wouldn't say disappointed, but I was a little let down, which is ironic for me, because I like it when bands do heavier, go with a heavier side, than when they do like the softer, more introspective side. But after I heard At Night We Live, which I just thought was such a phenomenal song, I was hoping more of the album would be like that, and it wasn't. And so it took me a few times to really like kind of get where they were coming from. But now that I almost feel like At Night We Live is an inappropriate song for that album, because the rest of the album doesn't fit around it, or vice versa. So but I love that song in and of itself, and then I like the rest of the album for what it is. But I do agree with you guys that they haven't really. I think it's actually kind of interesting. I disagree a little bit about Water and Solutions being like a heavier album, which I really don't think it is. I mean, I think it is like heavy emotion charged album, but it's not like a heavy. I think it was like their least heavy aggressive album that they did. It was much more like where emo was headed. They were one of those forerunners of like modern emo, I think. Where it was a little bit. It still had like heavier guitars, but it was still it was more like softer tinged, and it was a more fragile kind of sounding. And I just find that kind of interesting that they actually went back further than that, and this album almost sounds more like their original stuff before Tin Cans, where it was just kind of like a pounding heavy rock tinged songs. I thought that was just interesting. But as a whole, I thought it was a really good album. To me, it's also almost a little too short. I would have liked a couple of those songs thrown in there. Maybe a couple another like At Night We Live kind of songs to give it a little more dynamic. But I guess they were trying to make something short and sweet and not overstay their welcome. So I appreciate that. And then my favorite. Boy, by the way, did you guys ever watch the music video for At Night We Live?
No, they have one.
Well, sort of. Like Jonah just put together like this. All he did was he took this like viral video of this cat in Europe, like trying to like resuscitate another cat that got hit by a car, and then they're playing At Night We Live over it, which is obviously about Chi in his coma, and like it's the saddest freaking thing you've ever seen. There's like this flattened cat, and then another cat that's just like giving it CPR for real. Go look at it. It's so sad.
Yeah, I have to see that. That's wild.
And that I can't listen to that song and not think about like Chi in a hospital bed and then like this dead cat. Just depressing. And I'm not even a big cat fan.
Well, man, cats are pretty useless. That's still sad.
My favorite Jonah release, I'm gonna go. That's a really tough one for me, but I'm gonna go with The Volunteers, one of his solo albums, just because it has some of his classics in there, like Living Small and A Ghost, which I love the story behind that song. You guys know the story of Ghost or A Ghost?
No.
It's
No.
it's just like somebody gets sick of being alive, so they ask the higher powers to become a ghost, and where they can observe people but not interact, and then they realize that life was everything and that they've given it all up, and it's just a really interesting song. And I also like it that Jonah used that album as kind of like a art project, because he if you get the DVD that came with it, I'm sorry, the DVD that came with a future release called There's a Lot in Here, which was like a kind of a retrospective that he did, like a live retrospective, but he also released all the videos that went along with all of the songs of the Volunteers, and they were all these like just DIY videos that he made with friends, and they're really cool. So I really dig that release a lot. And okay, Dave, your turn.
I'm in somewhat agreement with everybody about At Night We Live. I love that song, and Far was always one of those bands that like I live like vicariously through the honestly I used to be I used to kind of dislike One Line Drawing and Jonah's original stuff because like I didn't like it was like too like emotional, introspective for me. But at the time, I'm talking like 12, 13.
Well, I remember that Amy and I dragged you to a show of his, and you didn't want to go, and then you loved it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I regret not seeing more, but I like Nightly Live. I was really anticipating it. I listened to more to it. I listened to these amount of times, but some of the songs, like half songs grab me, half songs kind of just like, all right. And again, it was a little more rocky, a little more, I don't know. I thought it was gonna be more like, I was waiting for the Water Solutions, which is of course my favorite part. Album. I'm not sure about Jonah's other releases, which one would be my favorite. Probably his older ones that have the. I don't know. I haven't really gone through his stuff enough, his solo stuff enough.
Well, it's about time.
I do like New End Original a lot. That's a good album. I think it's kind of got to get it.
All right, guys, should we wrap this up with talking about our favorite Deftones and Jonah live experiences that we can recall?
Deftones' most memorable has to be the one we saw at 14. I mean, I love seeing the other times. My least favorite was that, what was it, Lollapalooza or whatever? Oh, no, the
HF Festival.
Yeah, HF Festival. Local Baltimore Festival of Music, or Washington, D.C., whatever one, for people who don't know. And that was just normal stadium shows where they play midday, and it's just very impersonal. But that original 930 Club show, we like just turned 15 about, and we're like never been to a big rock concert, and God, I felt so small compared to everybody else there compared to like how I'm in shows these days, and just getting like when the music started, how like we just got pushed around. I'm like, oh my God, I remember. Didn't Jay
me and Jay all went together. That was like our first. Well, not Jay's first. He saw like You saw a few shows before that, didn't you?
Just the Smashing Pumpkins.
Okay.
I just remember looking on Jason's face, especially like all of us were like, "Holy crap!" And we're like getting like just killed by just like the pit and everybody moving around.
Right. I remember that moment too, where like I think I remember pretty clearly. I have to make a correction, Dave. That was at the Capitol Ballroom, which became Nation in DC. It wasn't 9:30, and that I remember none of us had really, well, except for Jason, we hadn't been in a pit or anything before. We didn't know the crowd dynamic.
No, I hadn't. The other concerts that I've been to weren't like that.
Yeah, so we were all, and it was like our first club show, and without parents, and we went in there, and I remember they just blasted in with Be Quiet and Drive, and the place went freaking nuts. And we were just, yeah, like you said, we were all getting slammed around. I remember we all just kind of looked at each other and were like, we didn't even know how to react. It was like this whole new world. It was so much fun. That's why as a teacher, especially a middle school teacher, like I'm always asking kids about what concerts they've been to, and they never go. Like they don't go to shows. It's like they don't even have a drive to, like they're not even interested in it. I'm like, do you like music? Yeah. Like, do you ever want to see it live? Oh, I don't care. And like to me, it's so crazy to think, because that's, to me, that you can't really have one without the other, because it was such a complimentary experience to like just listening to it, is experiencing it, and I'll never forget that's kind of reaffirming, Dave, that you remember that moment too, that we were all just like, holy crap, like this is something, unlike anything else in the world. It was really cool. And somehow I remember you had bought Adrenaline that night, and somehow you managed to not.
Me?
Yeah, you did, and you managed to keep it intact in your pocket the whole show, even though we were like
Yeah,
sailing around. I commend you for that.
I bought that jacket that it said Deftones and then
The Windbreaker.
it said Tecto, California. Yeah, that's how I remember that they're from Sacramento.
I'm sorry, Dave. What's your favorite Jonah experience?
The one time we played in that house, in that guy's
That was the
living
first
room,
time.
still underground. It was awesome.
There was like 20 people there.
Like, of course, someone will come here on my show with a Pantera shirt.
Wait, Jonah commented on your shirt?
No, and Jason's
I forgot Jason was there too. Oh, okay, Jay. What was your favorite Deftones show?
Wow, I don't know. Were you there when I saw him at Michael's 8th Avenue
Shut the
in
hell
Glen
up!
Burnie?
No, that was the one time I didn't go for like no reason, and I heard it was the coolest show ever.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. He jumped off like the speaker stack and the crowd and stuff. And then I saw him like this past year, and like the show got delayed for whatever reason.
Yeah, you had mentioned that.
And when they when they finally played, like there was one opening band, and then they played forever. So it was pretty awesome.
I heard that when I missed them in Oahu, they played for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, they play. I think they played for like 2 hours on this show. It was pretty wild. And then my favorite Jonah show was probably that one me and Terry went to.
In Baltimore?
Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Chris, you want to go?
I don't think I have a favorite Deftones show yet because I haven't been to enough. I think I've only been to 2.
Really?
I was like, yeah, like I never I think the first time was the not Pit of Chaos. What is it?
Oh yeah, when we saw him, Family Values 2006.
Yeah. And then the second time was 9:30.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, I definitely like the atmosphere of the 9:30 Club more than
Sure.
the stadium.
I'm sorry, I gotta interject real quick about that show. And it's all the crap that I've talked about Korn tonight. I gotta admit, and that this was this was Family Values. I think it was 2006, maybe 7. I don't remember the year, but it was the time that they did with Deftones, and Deftones I thought were great. They were amazing, as they always are, but Korn just stole the show from me. I thought they were awesome that night. I had so much fun. I had a pit ticket. And I hadn't seen Korn play since like the original Family Values tour in like 1999, I think. So I hate to say it, but like to me, Korn trumped the Deftones that night. They just really like rocked the house. But they're more of an arena band or whatever. Anyway, like Deftones, they just work better in a club because they're way more personal, I think.
That show did give me an appreciation for Korn because I always hated them before then. When I saw them live, I actually went out and bought their first 2 CDs.
They were fun, right? I mean, it was just fun. I just had a great time. And they were having fun too, and they played for like 2 hours.
But yeah, my favorite Jonah show would definitely be the 2-night consecutive Philly to Jersey.
Oh yeah.
Which was almost like 4 shows in one because it wasn't. It was both shows were I think in Jersey, but the one was at a college, and then after the show ended, like he and like a bunch of people, he played for like a bunch of us in a stairwell Radiohead cover and opened with a Radiohead cover, and then just went through more of his songs, and then he like mentioned as we were all finally leaving that he was playing at for someone's birthday at a bar the next night, and he was like, "Hey, you shall come." And then, we went to that, and it was, the bar, it was just really loud, and he had to, like, kind of, like, he was there for someone's birthday, but nobody was really listening to him because it was a bar or whatever, except for you, me, and whoever. But then, like, again, same thing, after that bar show, like, he got a bunch of us out in, like, literally the parking lot, and we all sat, like, in a semicircle around him, and he just, like, sat down and played, and, like, afterwards, I remember, like, I was telling Dan that I've never been, like, a regular churchgoer, but that was just a total spiritual experience for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
And that was definitely, like, one of the best shows I've ever been to.
Isn't it amazing, too, how Jonah has that ability to take a show that's not working and just make it work? And,
Yeah.
It was just incredible. Oh, yeah, okay, so favorite Deftones show. This is going to be really hard for me, for both, because I've just had some real, like Chris was saying, like there were some real spiritual experiences on both bands or artists. But yeah, that first time we saw the Deftones, that was Dave and Jay and me and my first major show. Especially like in a club setting that we ever went to when we were like 14 or 15, and that was a show that introduced us to the wonderful world of live music, and it was just freaking incredible. And they, and that was back in like Deftones, back in their original, I don't want to say heyday, but it was before they got really big, but they had that underground, huge. They were like a huge underground heroes, but they weren't mainstream per se. They didn't sell huge record sales or anything. It was before, way before White Pony. That was just great. And then just like so many great times that we saw them. I mean, I saw them. After that, this was right before White Pony came out, and they did a signing at Towson, and during the day, and then we went to DC that night to see him play at Nation, which used to be Capitol Ballroom. So it was the same venue, and I just remember it was just really cool. Like they had like a big White Pony banner that had like poles punched in it, so it looked like a starry backdrop, and Chino was wearing like a suit. And he was kind of like, Chino was like, he was kind of like dancing up on top of the monitors and stuff. It was just a really cool atmosphere. And then Dave mentioned the HF Festival show, which they only played like 6 songs, but something about them that day was just, it was a really cool atmosphere and it was kind of rainy and cold, and I was down in the steamy pit. Cool. And I remember, I was thinking about this the other day. I had a couple Minion demos in my pocket, and I kept throwing them on stage to see if like Chino would pick them up. So such a naive kid, as if like Chino would pick up our Minion demo and be like, "Oh my God, these guys are the best big thing. We gotta sign these guys." The thing that I've always liked about them live is that they never ever seem to be like phoning it in. They just play really passionately, and Chino really seems to enjoy himself, jumping in the crowd and stuff. I appreciate that. And it seems like they've gotten older, but like especially Chino's gotten fitter. Like he's much more active, and I'm serious this time. Because when he was fatter, he couldn't move around as much. He was just kind of stuck there, like.
So he's no Sean Popper now, huh? He can move.
I remember like seeing like new metal rock girls would like love him in his old days where his shirts would like flow off his body and he was all your skin Hispanic. Now he got like.
And they still love him. He makes money and he's a musician. He can be a fat slob, but he's a musician. Girls will be like, "Oh my God."
It's true. I can't pick a favorite Jonah show because all of I mean that first show, again we were just kids, and it really, that was like the most personal, smallest show that that I probably have ever been to, in that with that kind of level of musician, and it was just it was just really really unique, and I remember how cool it was that he was taking requests from us, and I remember he played two of my requests. He played Joining the Circus, and he played I Like It. And I remember he started crying. He started crying during I Like It, and I felt was like apologizing, but he was like, no, that's good. Like this is what I'm. This is real honest stuff. So I was like, that was cool. But then I mean, like every time I've seen him, it's just been like phenomenal. I mean, and like Chris mentioned those shows in Jersey, which was great because there was one night, and then the next night we saw him again, and he did like the regular set in front of the whole audience, and then he stayed after for people that wanted to stick around and play like a smaller, not plugged in set. And I just like all the different stuff he's always done, where he's had like his R2 machine for a while, and then he didn't. Sometimes he just has his guitar, and sometimes he'll play some songs with a full band. Like I saw him in Philly a few times, and he had like a full band, and he was doing like just back band of his solo stuff, and then he'd play like some new and original. And then when I saw him with Gratitude on the last Gratitude tour, that was cool because they had the original new and original guitarist, and they played Gratitude and new and original material, and that was really cool. And I got to mention too, just for posterity's sake, that Jonah is like a super nice guy, and every time you see him at a show, he's always willing to chat with you and like learn your name, and he's always haggles on his sliding scale
Give you a hug.
price. Yeah, he gives you a hug and canoodles you a little bit. He's such a nice guy, and he makes you want to listen to his music, and I really appreciate that. So
As for being so nice about him, can I say one thing that I don't like about him?
yeah.
Okay, I don't like that he tries to talk about his political views on his stuff.
Yeah, well.
Like, I don't feel like somebody being a musician or an actor, they shouldn't talk about that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. On an earlier podcast, I was talking to an old friend of mine from New York, and Kelly, and we were talking about Lady Gaga, and they were saying that they feel that Lady Gaga has every right to talk about her beliefs and her messages, because she has that platform.
But that's like, I mean, that doesn't make her any more educated. Like, I mean, musicians and actors, yeah, they have a talent, but that doesn't mean they're intelligent people.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I don't know if I have time to get into that debate.
No, I'm not trying to start a debate. That was like on his Facebook, some guy made a post, and it was a post in response to Jonah's thing, and I came back with my post, and I was like, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into it, but like that was,
Yeah.
I deleted him from Facebook, and that's a big deal. I don't know if you know that or not, but I deleted him. He was no longer my Facebook friend.
Wow, that's like the, once you take somebody off of Facebook, you've like deleted them from existence. I mean, that's, yeah, I'm not gonna get into that whole artist and their political views thing right now, but I will say,
No, that wasn't my goal. I was just
no, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you, but I'm just not to defend him, but just for Jonah's part, I do. He's always done that, so it's not like a new thing. So I'm just gonna put that out there that he's.
well, and honestly, I think he's more intelligent probably than the average bear,
Yeah.
at least.
And also, one thing I appreciate about Jonah, as opposed to like Sean Penn or somebody who who'll go out and like start railing on MSNBC about Fox News or something, as a or like Madonna doing whatever Madonna does, or whoever.
Well, nobody likes Madonna, Dan.
I know, but I'm just an example. But I'm just saying, for Jonah's part, he is very open about his views, but he's also very much open to conversation. Like he likes debate, and he likes it when people have a conversation. So he doesn't, when he does go on his rants and stuff, he doesn't seem to be like, I've never heard him just say like, well, this is the way things are, and this, like my word is the end of the discussion. It's always like,
No.
he just like puts stuff out there, and then he lets people, piggyback onto it, and so I just, throwing that out there.
I just think there's too many people that are out there that don't have their own opinions, and then when a celebrity or a celebrity like musician or actor or whatever you want to call them says something, they're instant. They just latch onto that and they take that as truth. Yeah. That was my only thing, and it's probably really not that celebrities shouldn't say stuff. It's that people shouldn't be so stupid.
Yeah, that's my take too. Is like, you know, if somebody has a microphone or a platform and they want to say it, like, I don't know. I can't really make a judgment on whether or not they should, but I can't blame them for how they feel. I have to blame the stupid sheep that go along with what everybody tells them that they should think. That's, you know.
Okay, well, since we're taking this stance then, since we're on a public platform, I'm going to say I don't like robots. It really scares me, all the, like, advances and stuff that are happening.
Just to wrap it up, I was just going to mention for our recommendation and upcoming section that the Chino and Shaun Lopez of Far collaboration project called Crosses has a new EP coming out, I think at the end of the month or next month or something. Have you guys heard Crosses at all?
No.
It's alright. It's kind of like a Team Sleepy kind of electronic, more beat driven. I like it better than Team Sleep, but it's it's pretty much what you.
Yeah, I didn't like Team Sleep.
I saw them live too, and
I actually liked it.
It's background music to me.
It's Chino's version of shoegazing.
And that's kind of what Crosses is too.
What is this thing you guys keep saying? Shoegazing? Right. Like I'm looking at a shoe.
David, you're gonna have to explain it because I didn't know what it was until last week. So.
The best artist that it's an example of is this sort of grunge, just kind of trippy artist called in the early '90s called Bloody Valentine. I've heard of that. It's like when it's like this early '90s alternative drugged out style of music where like you're so drugged out that like you just kind of drone out and stare at your shoes the whole time. So you guys really were saying shoegazing. I thought I was just. Wow. No, okay. No. Like at first I thought you were saying Shoegaze, but I was like, shoegazing. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
I just assumed it was like a new genre. Like I thought it was maybe like a post-emo, kind of like slowcore or whatever, like chill wave. Or that's a new genre too. I didn't know what shoegaze was, and then Chris and Dave like introduced me to My Bloody Valentine, which I apparently totally missed, and they were like they sound like a kind of a boring version of the Pumpkins to me. So, but I mean, not to whatever. I just said I didn't know shoegaze was like in the past. I thought it was new. So I don't know how I missed that.
Didn't even know what you guys were talking about. I just tried to.
Well, I'm glad that I'm not the only one. All right, and last thing I was going to mention is just that Jonah is also working on a covers album, which I think the songs were all given, the ideas were given to him by fans, as his usual collaboration with his community of people. So I appreciate that.
I like most of his covers. Yeah. So it should be pretty good.
To wrap up this episode, I'm going to play you a song by a band that was obviously heavily influenced by the Deftones and probably Far. This is Fueled by Ignorance. They were a short-lived band from Vancouver, British Columbia. This album called Tears is obviously heavily influenced by Deftones Adrenaline, especially. You can really tell that the guitarist had a soft spot for Stephen Carpenter's kind of raw, crunchy sound from Adrenaline, and the singer's pitch and inflections definitely ring true of Chino. But they were super nice guys. I got a really nice letter from the band when I originally ordered their CD, and I joined their street team for a while. And this song, titled Tears, I believe is in reference to their former member, I think bass player, that had died somehow, probably in a car accident or something, and this is a dedication to him. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next episode. Thanks. The main website for this podcast is bumusiccast.wordpress.com. Please leave us feedback there in the comments section, or please email us at breathingunderwater1@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at breathingunder, but I'm only really going to post when we have a new episode available. Other than that, there's not going to be much other web presence for now. I'm just trying to keep things simple. So if you need to contact us, WordPress or email is probably the best bet.
All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the persons expressing them and have no relation to the companies, artists, or bands discussed.
In addition, the participants of this podcast claim no rights or ownership of the musical media, songs, sound clips, etc. presented in this podcast, which are solely for promotional purposes. If there are any issues with any content presented in this podcast, please contact us and we'd be happy to take care of it.
So please do not sue us or be a hater.
Thanks for listening.